Yeah.
All right. Good evening, everybody. How are you all doing today? Happy New Year. More moments to abide in. So I am doing my best to fill in for either So Sweet Alma, Robin, or Brother Michael. So I'm fifth on the list, which is like pulling up from the farm system just to get somebody to hit the bell, you know. So yeah. Is anyone brand new to Zen practice? First time ever? Like, what is this? So the beauty of it is you have a greater understanding of Zen practice than everybody else in this room, because you have zero understanding of it, and that is where you always want to remain. So from this moment on, I will just be ruining your Zen practice. One thing I will say before we begin, because it's something that, you know, always, it's just a funny thing. I mean, the moment years ago when I saw that we now had Zen cereal, you know, people often say that, for example, I mean, welcome to 2024 now, I guess, and everybody's interpretation of what these words mean. And people often say they feel very Zen, right? And so what that gives us this idea of is that Zen is a good thing or a positive thing or even a peaceful thing. And that isn't what Zen is at all. Zen is an experience of the present moment beyond a definition. But leave it to Americans to take a word and completely ruin it. So that's where we are. But Zen is simply an experience. It actually, the word Zen comes from Chinese Chan, jhana, knowledge, gnosis. It's an experience. And what that experience is, it might be peaceful, it might be pleasant, it might be happy, and your experience might also be completely miserable and painful. This is also Zen. See, now that I've said stuff, and now you're thinking about what it is, I have completely ruined what it actually is. You see how that worked? Now you're starting to formulate some ideas of what you think Zen is, based on the little 60 seconds of words I just said. And now you are actually moving further away from the experience. And you're now abiding in some cognitive thought about the experience. So you've been warned now to never listen to any other Zen talk again. But nobody ever listens to me anyway, so we're just going to sit. Very specifically, the Zen practice of meditation is traditionally different lineages do it different ways, different schools of Zen practice, but in general, it's a silent meditation practice, meaning there's no guidance, there's no anything. It's just an opportunity to sit silently. Since you are brand new, a few basic instructions very often, and the question is, well, what do I do when I sit silent? Right? Well, what you do is you just sit silently. What's going to happen is your mind is going to race everywhere. It'll wander to what you had for lunch, you know, to Is your car still in the parking lot across the street? Is your bike outside? What time are you going to go to bed later? It'll wander everywhere. What happened when you were 8 years old, right? If it wasn't wandering there, it is now. So your mind is just going to wander. And the idea with this practice is when the mind wanders, we use sensation of breath as a guide, as an anchor, as something to abide and come back to. Abide in, abide with, and come back to. So as your mind wanders, recognize the wandering, come back to sensation of breath. About a second to a second and a half later, your mind will wander again. Recognize you're lost in thought, come back to sensation of breath. At some point during your practice, you may just give up and say, well, I'm just going to let my mind wander. And that's okay too, but that's just sitting and letting your mind wander. So try to then gently release that thought, come back to sensation of breath, which could be the inhale and exhale. It could be feeling the sensation on your, through your nostrils or in your mouth, however you're breathing. The sounds help as well because the sounds bring you back to present moment. So what we're working on is simply abiding in present moment. And when our mind wanders into thought, past, future, etc., we're not in present moment. We're in thought land. And that's not the end of the world. You didn't fail if you do that. It just means you're human. And that's probably what you're going to do for the next 3 hours as we sit here. Just kidding. Laughter is important. So to those who are joining virtually, welcome. Glad you're here. My apologies for those who thought you'd have Brother Michael, Alma, Robin, or Sozui. You get me. So finding a posture that is comfortable. If you are in the chairs often, just pushing the stomach forward. Same thing on the cushion. Allows the back to straighten. Shoulders relaxed. Hands can be on the knees, on the lap, whatever is comfortable. Traditional practice with Zen would be eyes are open slightly. So you would close them and then just open them slightly, gazing off the edge of the nose, down at about a foot in front of you. If you're in the chairs or benches, you'll be staring right at the back of the seat in front of you. And you're going to hold your gaze there. I will sound the bell to begin and end. How was your experience? I like to pick on the new people.
Me? My mind was with all kinds of thoughts going on, even when I was trying to reel them in. But I have done other meditation, but it's hard.
Yes.
And I'm going through a transition, so that's even worse.
We're always going through a
Yeah.
transition. Getting in the car, getting out of the car.
Sure.
Going in the grocery store, going out of the grocery store. That's our whole life. There's transitions. What else? How was your experience? Or what was your experience?
Try to focus more on the sensation of the breath in this meditation. I've never actually considered breathing to be sensational.
Yeah.
So I was really focused in on that. And yeah, it's interesting trying to like you said, kind of realize when you're wandering and kind of reel it back in and just let the limbic system kind of, get control of it, I guess, in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. I think also Robin, she focuses a lot on stillness, and I'm locked in on stillness. But you didn't mention anything about stillness, and I kept thinking can I move? But yeah, obviously those thoughts are the mind wandering and then reeling it back in.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because traditionally the practice is, you set your posture and you don't move, right? The question is, not suggesting that you did this, but just as an example, right, for anybody really. The question is, if we tell ourselves we're going to stay perfectly still, and for 17 minutes or whatever it is, we wrestle in our mind with this idea of staying perfectly still, maybe we've accomplished the physical stillness for 17 minutes, but we've wrestled with it in our head for 17 minutes, which is not still at all, right? So yes, agreed, the practice remains still. If there's a fire, for the new people, please exit the building. But otherwise, you work on maintaining stillness of posture. But the stillness of mind is really what the practice is for, ultimately. Can we still the mind? Right? The Buddhist teaching, still the body, still the speech, still the mind. Speech is pretty easy. We just have to, close our mouth and stop talking, and we got that taken care of. That tends to be the easiest in this situation. And then after that is the stillness of the body. And so we try to find a position that's comfortable and maintain that posture. But then this darn thing, what do we do with it? And can we gently let it abide on present moment? And the present moment could be staying still, staying still, staying still. Or sensation of breath or whatever it might be. But you just want to watch, notice how much your mind wrestles with things. Because when we are physically still and our speech is quiet, it allows us to give a little extra awareness to what arises in the mind. You begin to recognize how crazy your mind actually is, right? No offense to anyone who doesn't have a crazy mind. And then you begin to realize, like, wow, that crazy mind, that's what I'm running around with all day long outside of these walls. And that crazy mind, those thoughts that are just ridiculous, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, those are the thoughts that become words in our lives. And those words become actions in our lives. So one beauty of a silent meditation practice is to truly focus on what is arising. Guided meditations are wonderful, right? There's 1,000 different types of meditation. They all can be beneficial. But when you're being guided, you're focused on the guidance. When you're using a mantra, you're focused on the mantra. When you're listening to music or whatever it might be, you're focused on that thing. When you're silent, it's just you and the thing that drives you crazy all day long, which is you, right? So, yeah.
That's something.
Yeah.
I feel what you were saying about having a busy mind, and what helps me is my mind versus mind too. It's like sweeping the mind, the floor of the mind, the room. I mean, it's like it's dust everywhere, but at least it's like cleansing the floor.
Yeah. Definitely.
It's still dirty, but
Yeah. In the actual physical sweeping, right? My master used to always say you got to sweep the leaves every single day, because if you miss a day, what happens the next day? More leaves, right? You miss a week of sweeping the leaves, you got a week of leaves to sweep up. Well, many of us have gone years without sweeping the mind. So when you first start, right, or if you don't have a daily regular practice, it's it's gonna be a little rough when you start sweeping. There'll be some rocks in there and some other fun stuff, right? Yeah. What else? Anything? Thoughts or comments? Yeah.
I was wondering how maybe mindfulness kind of plays into the Zen practice with Zazen, and the stillness and the obviously trying to use breathing as a focal point to calm down or to just keep your mind from wandering. But it also seems like it's acceptable to listen to sounds and just let those guide you in a way. But it's I don't know, it seems kind of odd at times because it's which one do I do? Or is it?
Sure. The question really, when I hear that around the mindfulness is, and you're in essence asking how mindfulness and the word mindfulness, the practice of mindfulness relates to Zen practice. The question really is mindfulness as taught by the Buddha or mindfulness as taught by Americans in the year 2023, right? Those are two very different things.
Right.
And when you look at the practice of mindfulness, and you have without getting into the long drawn out teaching on this, but you have very simply the basic Four Noble Truths. And for anyone who might be brand new to this stuff, but you have the core teachings of the Buddha, the Four Noble Truths. First thing he said is life is filled with dukkha. There's comfort, angst, dissatisfaction, right? Second is the cause, the origin of our suffering. The three poisons, as they're known, the greed, anger, and ignorance, right? We overcome that with generosity, compassion, and wisdom. That is the practice. You can spend your entire life just focused on cultivating generosity, compassion, and wisdom. That's it. The third one is the ending of suffering, the cessation of suffering. And the fourth is the path. And this is the Eightfold Path. I'm sure you're familiar with all of this in theory, right? You have the livelihood, effort, mindfulness, concentration, right? Views, thought, speech, action. But the ending of livelihood, effort, mindfulness, and concentration, where is mindfulness on that list? Views, thought, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, concentration. Where is it?
The end.
The end. Now, where do most people in a Western culture come into Buddhist practice? Through what?
Mindfulness.
Mindfulness, right? So An angry person who meditates is just an angry meditator. Right? A greedy person who meditates is just a greedy meditator. So the practice is to look at, and I'll get to your question ultimately, but I just want to put some context behind it. The practice is to look at where are we with everything we're doing prior to even getting to mindfulness and concentration. When we had the old Buddha Free in the college area, it's just 10 years ago or whatever, we had a sign on the window that said free meditation. And I used to always joke that if that sign said free morality class, how many people do you think are showing up, Free generosity class? Free patience? Nope. But you throw the word meditation in there and everybody's like, dude, I'm in. And then you put the Western spin on it and you call it mindfulness because everybody's afraid of, not everybody, but many people are afraid of the word meditation. So they just call it mindfulness. And then everyone's like, yep, I'm all into mindfulness, right? So I just want to give some context to where mindfulness comes from, very specifically on the Eightfold Path of the Buddhist teachings. Now, your question is, how does mindfulness relate to Zen practice, and is there benefit? What I'm hearing you say is there benefit to just letting the stuff go, the mind go when it gets into thoughts and being aware of them. The awareness is important, right? Mindfulness is awareness. So often people will say something like, well, I was in such a deep meditative state, I didn't even hear the baby crying. Well, if you didn't hear the baby crying during meditation, you weren't in a deep meditative state, you were asleep, right? Awareness, mindfulness is key to everything. But in Zen practice, we specifically look at what's called guarding the senses. And what causes all of the suffering in our lives? This thing. And it's driven by the senses. You familiar with the Heart Sutra?
No.
So Google Heart Sutra, it'll take you 45 seconds to read and about 1,000 years to ever understand and put into practice. But the Heart Sutra talks about going beyond the senses. No eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, mind. No sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, or thought. And what that means is our entire life, we crave things we want. And we have an aversion to things, run away from, that we don't want. So our senses rule our lives. So the practice of meditation, Zen practice specifically, of coming back to abiding in sensation of breath, is training the mind to not run with the thoughts. Be aware of them. There's a thought, thinking, hunger, back to breath. There's a thought, thinking, anger, back to breath. There's a thought, thinking, joy, back to breath. What we're doing is training the mind to not give in to these senses that cause all our suffering. That makes sense? So, aware of the thoughts, but sitting in meditation and just focusing on all of the thoughts and just thinking and thinking and thinking is sitting quietly and thinking. Very important, very, very effective in our daily lives, but are we concentrating the meditation aspect of it, the last one on the Eightfold Path, on present moment, or are we just sitting here quietly and thinking? So you're training the mind to abide in sensation of breath with an awareness of everything around you and the ability to come back to present moment. So you don't let your senses make you miserable. Does that help? Yeah. Anyone been angry about something for like 30 years? Are you even old enough to have thought about something for 30 years?
I have a baby face.
Okay.
You'd be surprised.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll give you a guess.
Well, now I want to know.
We'll guess.
My craving and desire wants to know the age, right?
Well, then guess.
Well, it has to be over 30 now.
33.
33? Huh. That's pretty good. I would have guessed a couple years higher just because you kind of put me on the spot, so I was going to go like 36 or something, right? So that thing you've been angry about since you were 3 years old, right? Where does that come from?
Lack of people being able to understand me. I have a learning disability that's auditory. So,
Yeah, go ahead.
frustration of not being able to make people understand me.
Understood. Yeah. And when you focus on that anger or frustration, how does it make you feel?
Horrible. Depressed.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
And when you focus on, do you like ice cream? Yeah. When you focus on ice cream, how does it make you feel?
Depends on how much I have to believe worse.
Right? And I'm not encouraging you to go eat a pint of ice cream, but the reality is where we put our mind determines our emotions. And our ability to set down anger, frustration that we've been carrying for 30 years or 50 years or 3 years or whatever it is, these things that we've been carrying around with us for so long that are causing so much dukkha, suffering, discomfort, angst, is because our mind just constantly lives in the past. Or stress, anxiety, fear, worry, our mind is constantly in the future. And so this practice is learning to just say, here I am. Right? Everything you just expressed, it's real, it's occurred, it's happened, it's a part of your life. And the practice is to say, okay, am I going to focus on that? Or am I going to say, here I am? And without the ice cream, to just sit, because we don't have a lot of food in here, so unfortunately. But does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not easy to do. This stuff's not easy to do. Right? What's that?
Oh, it's not.
No, it's definitely not. And that's why we call it a practice. And that is where the mindfulness also comes into play, is to be mindful and aware of what these triggers are that are causing these emotions. And the clarity around that is important. Understanding kind of that deep-rooted stuff that's going on within us is important. To see it, and then to apply Buddhist teachings of impermanence to it, and understand that that perception, that feeling can change. Right? Meaning, you don't have to spend the next 30 years angry about it. For all of us, whatever we're angry about, you know. So, sounds so simple, doesn't it? See how easy the Zen stuff is? Right? So anything else before we sit again to close the evening? Give you some more silence. Yeah.
Yeah, today was a rough day. Something happened in the morning, and so I was upset. I was mad. I was pissed off, and I was carrying that with me throughout the day. And I even told myself, like, okay, later on I gotta go to meditation. But I started applying some of those principles. I want to go visit my family, and had it been a different time, I would have reacted. I know how I would have reacted. It wouldn't have been good. But I was like, okay, well, it happened. It sucked. I'm not, like you said, Zen Buddhism, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's horrible.
Yeah.
Well, it was horrible, but you know what? Had it been a different me 15 months ago, I would have made the wrong decisions, and I know where I would have been, and it wouldn't be here. Yeah. So I was like, all right, it happened. I tried to control my thoughts and my anger. Which meant that I didn't say anything stupid, which meant that I didn't do anything stupid. Because I've been on that road before.
Yeah.
So, and now it's like, okay, well, it happened, I'm still here.
Beautiful. Yeah. Thanks for sharing. See how we always say, I always say, think good thoughts, speak good words, do good deeds. But the flip side to that is think stupid thoughts, say stupid things, do stupid deeds. Right?
Yeah.
That's where most of my life was. So, yeah. So good job. Proud of you for showing up and getting through the rough stuff, you know. So thank you. All right, so with that, we'll sit for a little bit longer. Again, finding a position that's comfortable for you. Closing the eyes and then opening them just slightly, holding your gaze. Posture, whatever you do, do not move at all. But in all fairness, that is the practice. It is to abide in stillness. So if you can stay still, that is the practice. I'll hit the bell to start and stop. Yeah, final thoughts, comments, questions, or anything? So just watch as you continue this evening on your way, wherever you're going, how often your mind gets pulled into something that in all likelihood isn't even present in your life right now, other than a story. And if we can begin to see that the story we're lost in about the future or the past, whatever it might be, about the fear, about the worry, about the anxiety, about the anger, about the emotions. Once in a while we have happy stories too, but nobody comes here because of all those. But just watch, even just tonight over the next hour, how quickly your mind will get lost in a story. And how that story you're telling yourself really will trigger and determine how you're feeling. And if you can at that moment stop the story and just come back to present moment, it's very often a more pleasant feeling than the story. So, with that, we'll join palms and close the transfer of merit. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. And before you all head out, our Dharma Bum host Meredith has a few announcements for us.
Okay. Hello everyone, I'm tonight's host Meredith. We opened the Dharma Bum Temple 17 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those who lead are not nuns, monks, gurus, masters, or teachers, and are not looking for students. They are simply practitioners sharing their interpretation of the practice. Every night we have different classes led by different people from various Buddhist traditions. We have a recovery sangha that meets several times a week for anyone with addiction, and our food redistribution program is every Thursday at 4:30. We have classes and programs every day, and everything we offer here is always free. The full schedule is on our website and also posted in the entryway above the shoe rack. We have a lending library. If you see a book you like, feel free to borrow it and then bring it back whenever you're done with it. Please straighten your seat or cushion before you head out. Thank you for being here. We wish you well and hope to see you all again soon.
Thanks, Meredith. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.